What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast. Baseball is back, as you heard. So excited to talk about it. We're seeing videos of guys swinging bats, throwing balls, taking grounders. There's been a lot of rain, I think, in Port St. Lucie the last few days, so actually not that much going on recently. But even the fact that the guys are all there, it's just so great that baseball is finally back. I have a few things to talk about, as well as who's going to be the most important player on the Mets this year, or guys that are the most important to their success. Otherwise, it's just going to be a lot of yapping from the boys here. It's a good one. James, how you feeling?
Feeling good, always good. Have been sick for a week. Birthday was last week. I did not respond well to the birthday festivities. Right after we did the interview with Trevor May, I basically got strep throat immediately and just got healthy now. So it really timed my sickness super well between podcast episodes. So the voice was never an issue. So shout out me, shout out you guys, and you didn't have to hear my raspy, horrible strep throat voice.
Yeah, we were out at Rockarola. Shout out Rockarola in Greenpoint, technically, right?
Nah, Williamsburg.
Williamsburg, Greenpoint, whatever. It's the border. They got a great bridge to hang out under. Um, love that bridge. It's not even a bridge; it's an overpass. But yeah, James, it was his birthday. We were having a great time. We were there for like 7 hours. It was so long, but James was like, "Oh man, I don't feel great." And I did something that I don't think I've ever done to one of my friends, but I was like, "Let me feel your forehead." And I felt James' forehead. I'm like, "You're burning up." I'm like, "You're a little bit warm right now." I think you're like, "I think I'm gonna go home." Like this feels weird, but luckily I didn't catch strep. I got sick, but I tested negative and I'm fine now. I still got that sick mouth feeling, but we're here. We're powering through it. That's the life of a podcaster. No days off for the Mets'd Up boys. And speaking of no days off, I guess we kind of took a couple off because we didn't do a breaking news, Luke Voit or G-Man Choi video, but we figured we could probably wait on that. What are you thinking about those moves there, James?
First question: have you ever seen the picture of Luke Voit in the sleeveless Syracuse Mets jersey?
Never.
Have
No,
you
I
seen that
don't.
one?
No, I mean, let's see. I follow a bunch of people on Mets Twitter, and I don't think any of them tweeted it out or SNY or any accounts, right? Nobody?
No, I never saw that once. But I love Mets fans. I love all the Mets beat reporters because tweets about Luke Voit and G-Man Choi were getting hundreds of thousands of impressions. Moves that are, I think everyone kind of knows that the moves are half of a joke, but I do think actually in context of the Mets roster, I think these two are actually slightly relevant because them coming to camp right now, we've talked about the fact that like building the Mets 4-man bench this year. Joey Wendell's on it, Omar Narvaez is on it, and Tyrone Taylor's on it. So that leaves one spot right now as either Mark Vientos or DJ Stewart are presumed the DH in the opening day lineup, and then the other one's presumably on the bench. With Mark Vientos having an option, this now means there's more competition for those last two spots. Ji-Man Choi and Luke Voit are in direct competition now with DJ Stewart and Mark Vientos for DH reps, bench hitter reps with no defensive home. That's what these signings mean. I think that is probably more relevant than just the fact that Luke Voit has big biceps.
Yeah, and thinking about it, because we were going to make a joke yesterday about Luke Voit on Twitter, where like SNY tweeted out a clip of like Luke Voit like catching like the softest infield pop up ever, and they're like Luke Voit getting in reps, and we're like going to quote tweet like over under 6 at bats, like as a New York Met. But the more and more like you actually think about it, it's definitely that Mark Vientos insurance. It's also like it's weird because theoretically Vientos is also still a third baseman, but now with Joey Wendell being there, you don't really need to have Vientos be that backup third baseman because Wendell will play third base if Beatty's not going to. DJ Stewart, I think, is a more interesting one because he plays a position that Voit and G-Man Choi do not play and that Vientos does not play. He plays the outfield and he plays it okay. Like he's not going to make great plays, but he will make the plays that he needs to. And we saw him make that great catch crashing into the wall last year on DJ Stewart Day, which I think should be a national holiday. But the thing that makes this tough is just that, like, Vientos having that option does make him a little bit expendable going into opening day, where you can send him to AAA and there's really nothing he can do about it. And unless he has a spring that makes him like have to be on the major league roster, there's probably a world where he starts the year in AAA, and it's not the worst thing either, I think, because he does still have a lot of improvements to make to his game.
And DJ Stewart has an option as well. still, which
Oh,
is
okay.
something that's not, I don't think, being discussed either. And G-Man Choi is a lefty and Luke Voit is a righty. So you can
And the
kind of see,
outfield thing, that's but
yeah,
Tyrone Taylor, so it doesn't
Tyron
matter.
Tyron Taylor is the backup outfielder. We know this year. We'll talk about it in a little bit now with Harrison Bader being the center fielder. Like outfield defense is paramount now. It's more important than it was under any regime in Mets history, probably at this point in time. So DJ Stewart, I don't think he's gonna play much in the outfield. I don't think that's much of the plan. I think he's like kind of an emergency outfielder, but
It's kinda
he's
fair.
go. I mean, and maybe not an emergency outfielder because we Starling Marte's legs. We're hearing good things now, but everyone's legs feel really good in February. So I'm still
Yeah.
I'm still definitely worried about that. And our big subject of this episode is going to be who's the most important player in the Mets team, spurned by an Anthony DeComo article saying that Starling Marte was the most important player in the Mets team, which is not true at
Not
all.
not the guy.
Not you're not that guy, pal, but he still could be a good player. But Tyrone Taylor's a good defensive outfield. Nemo's a good defensive outfielder. Harrison Bader's a great defensive outfielder. Starling Marte, if his legs work, is a good defensive outfielder. DJ Stewart, no matter what, probably just like a slightly worse than league average defensive outfielder. So I
Yeah.
think that is the big part of this equation. That is better than Voit, G-Man Choi, or Vientos can say they are at any position, especially when Pete Alonso is the everyday first baseman. But DJ Stewart definitely has the leg up on this whole competition. One, being a lefty. Two, being someone who can conceivably play the outfield. And three, having good results in this uniform down the stretch last year. That's something no one else does. That's
Yeah.
important. But I think that it is still now there's a 4-man race for 2 spots with Stewart ahead and the other 3 just kind of the same, or more likely Vientos and Voigt being kind of close.
Yeah, who do you think if you had to pick right now, who do you think gets that last spot? If it let's just say DJ Stewart's making it, who's getting that last spot?
If I had to pick now, it's probably Stewart and Voigt.
Okay, interesting,
Truthfully,
yeah,
I just think Voigt can probably hit a little better than Mark Vientos right now. And
and I
Vientos
gotta
has the option. So why not just keep the guy in the roster who doesn't have an option and send the guy down who does have the option? So you get as much as Voigt as you can. If you need to, then you switch.
and with Luke Voit, it would make sense too if DJ Stewart's the DH that you can now have a platoon there as well at the DH spot where Voit can face the lefties, DJ Stewart can face the righties. And I mean, Voit is also a guy too who's like a few seasons ago he technically led baseball in home runs in that COVID year. So like he has good power, he has the ability to hit the ball hard. He just hasn't really been given a shot the last couple seasons because I think the last time we saw him play with the Yankees, he just wasn't particularly very good.
No, but when he ended that 2022 season, I think that was with the Brewers. He also was quite good down there.
Yeah.
And even 2021, he injuries. The problem with Voigt's mostly been injuries. He played 70 games in 21. He was 13% better than league average. The strikeout
Okay.
rate's always going to be like 30%, but like at least if he hits the ball, he'll hit it. So I think the Mets can do worse with this spot. I know this is not JD Martinez. This is not Jorge Soler. This is not a sexy DH option. But in terms of what they want to do, what the plan was into this offseason, as how we're have to frame every single conversation about Mets acquisitions, like it's fine. Just take a flyer on a guy who might just run into a few home runs in April and May. And if it doesn't work or if he gets hurt like usual, then you give Mark Vientos the shot. It's a long season.
And to Mets fans who were screaming and yelling about again, like those JD Martinez, those Jorge Soler players, every single day that goes by is better and better for the Mets to eventually maybe sneak away like a player like that. I know Soler's on the Giants now, but to sneak away a JD Martinez because those guys want to play as we get closer and closer to spring training. All of a sudden, that price might be going down because as soon as the actual games start, JD Martinez is behind. He has to get ready. So it doesn't matter if on February 20th, JD Martinez is a Met or if on March 15th, he's a Met. Like at the end of the day, if he is one, the team will be better off with him than without him for sure on a 1-year deal for cheap money, whatever it's going to be. But as the days go on, it just helps more and more and makes it, I think, more likely that it could be a possibility he's on the team.
Something else critical with these moves, something that's much less sexy and much more boring. I'm talking about the chances of JD Martinez being a Met, but it's the fact that the Mets AAA roster is always barren. It's just
Yeah.
miserably bad. So the fact that now you have these guys on the roster, if G-Man Choi or Luke Voigt doesn't make the team, you can try to pass them through waivers to get them to Syracuse, which would suck for them, like
Yeah.
inostensibly. But at least like having those guys as your like major league depth options instead of like JT Schwartz or like Joe Suozzi, as again, like good guys, but I just don't think they're the same caliber of baseball players, G-Man Choi and Luke Voigt. But so it's just
Yeah.
like
Guys
just
who we've
having,
seen succeed at the major league level
yeah,
before.
it's just like that was a big emphasis of the offseason. A guy like Zach Short, who we like talked about as a joke like 3 months ago as an acquisition, where it's just like, okay, here's someone at AAA who's like played Major League Baseball before and we think can play it again. I think that's relevant. The Mets have needed that a lot. Like Jose Iglesias being at Syracuse this year.
Yeah.
Like these are like relevant things. This Ben Gamble, as people have talked about in the last week, like Trace Thompson, like just having guys on the AAA roster who like, all right, we need an outfielder like for 3 days. Just get this guy up to take a good at bat. Like that's relevant. I think that's what these moves are about, just because this depth has been so bad for so long now, for basically our entire lives, adult, child, everything, like since
Yeah.
we were conceived. And then this is it. So just need more baseball players on the baseball team.
100%. You brought up the outfield too. We heard some interesting stuff from Carlos Mendoza because there had been speculation as to what the outfield was going to look like. And he has said Harrison Bader in center field, Brandon Nimmo in left. Initial reaction, what do you think? Because I think it's like that was a no brainer to me.
I think it was a no-brainer. Like, and I also think that hasn't changed the way we've thought about the center field thing. I think it's more of like just being overblown as like the only quote happening on February 19th in spring training. Where if
Yeah,
you look at Harrison Bader, like he is one of the best defensive outfielders in the league, established, official. We knew that
totally.
the day he signed. Also, not a very good hitter,
No,
established, official. Have known that forever. And the other thing about Bader, knowing he's so good defensively, but knowing he's not so good at the plate, his last 3 years. And this years he's been mostly healthy, not totally healthy. He's dealt with some injuries, but mostly healthy. 401 plate appearances, 313 plate appearances, 344 plate appearances. So while he is the center fielder and will be the opening day center fielder, probably hitting eighth or ninth, I think that it's still about that's only about half a season's worth of plate appearances, 60% of
yeah,
the season's worth of plate appearances, which I think all you should expect Harrison Bader to play in the outfield, because he's just not, he's barely a league average hitter. If he is a league average hitter, it's a huge success, but he just
huge.
probably isn't one. So I think the more interesting question with this is, who is the backup center fielder? Is it still Brandon Nimmo or is it Tyrone Taylor? When Harrison Bader's not in the lineup against probably tougher righties, who becomes the backup center fielder right now? Because Tyrone Taylor is also a right-handed batter and Brandon Nimmo is a lefty. But now, is this conversation being like, we never want Brandon Nimmo playing center field again? Is that what this conversation is, or is this conversation he's not going to play the most in center field? So I wish there was a follow up question for one of the 25, 35 journalists at Port St. Lucie right now to ask when this was said. But who's the backup center fielder on the Mets? Because I think that is going to be like who's playing 40% of the center field reps, which is substantial.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor played the most center field in 2022 for the Brewers, 670 innings, 5 OAA, which is exceptional. That's a really good center fielder defensively. So he can definitely do it. They didn't play him there last year very much, 40 innings as compared to, a 570 in total in the outfield for the Brewers. But that was also because I think they were like, we've got Garrett Mitchell and Joey Weimer and Sal
Yeah.
Frelick and those guys. We want to see what they've got. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably Nimmo. I hope it's Nimmo. But also in the same regard, like we know that, like Nimmo, I'm knocking on all the wood around me as possible. Like he's a guy who does get like nicked up during the season. Like he gets like those neck things. He gets like a sore calf. He gets a sore thigh, a hamstring, whatever. Like he's just got maybe some bad muscles. I don't know. Like whatever it is, the muscles get tight for Brandon as the season goes on. So I think this is probably more of just like again, Harrison Bader, good defensive center fielder. He's better than Brandon Nimmo, obviously defensively in center field. And then in terms of backup, like maybe you just want to keep Brandon Nimmo as fresh as possible because I mean, we've seen him the last couple seasons. He's been phenomenal. He's been great. What can he do when he feels great the entire year, when he's not tight, when he just has to worry about running down the left field corner and throwing the ball about 80 feet to the cutoff man? Like maybe that's what's the difference between getting Brandon Nimmo, who's been a great offensive player, to being what could be maybe elite.
Yeah, and there's even an argument that he already is elite. I would say he's like pretty close to it already. He's some tracking like a 4 to 5 win player a year with like an 850 OPS, 25 homers. Like that's and he's gonna hit leadoff for you. He's always been more valuable as an offensive player than a defensive player.
Yes.
And his value skyrocketed the last few years because he proved he could be a high end offensive player and a better than average defensive player at a premium position. That's why he got that contract. I think no matter what position he plays, I think the contract is still relevant for his skill set, especially as he's about to turn 31 and just had the best season of his entire career. He's the kind of guy who seems like he's getting better with age because it's about his selective
Yes.
aggression, his not his more of his played approach, like kind of balancing where he used to be as like ultra passive to now being aggressive but still finding the walks, now finding more power than ever. And again, 31 is old. There's not many center fielders who are 31 in the whole league. It's just, especially when you have an 8-year, 7-year now commitment on a guy, it seems like a lot to put his body through. But I still think that the best version of the Mets offense, which is something that I'm not particularly worried about, but I can see a part in the season where the Mets definitely need some offense. The best version of the
Yeah.
Mets offense definitely has Brandon Nimmo in center field rather than Harrison Bader.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
also think that this isn't this is a static conversation. I think that Harrison Bader being the center field doesn't mean he's playing center field for 700 plate appearances. That would be insane.
That would be bad.
I'd be shocked if he had more than 450. I think it might be on the high end of his career if he stays healthy around 400, but still, I think he's only done that once or twice his entire major league career. He's just not a good enough hitter to sustain that, unless he suddenly becomes a good enough hitter. But in which case, there'll be other good things happening. Maybe if he
Yeah.
becomes a good hitter, anyone could be a good hitter. I don't know, but it's just this. It's like this is the kind of thing where it's a headline that went rampant on a day where not much was going on, but there were a lot of people in attendance at spring training.
Yeah.
Is when we would have been in spring training if we were still employed by this team, exactly when we were there last year. But I digress. That's neither here nor there. But it's just I think it's more of a situation where it's on Twitter, it's on the internet, it's being written about, so it's getting more conversations. But Harrison Bader is like a 50 to 60% player, and I think he's going to be that again. Very interested to see whether the backup center fielder is Nimmo or Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, they had to get another headline besides Pete Alonso extension, right? Because that's
Of
just been like
course,
the question from every
every day
reporter. Mike Puma wakes up every day. He's like, I can't wait to ask about a Pete Alonso extension. He's like, he's eating his ice cream for
never
breakfast, and
stops.
he's going, he's eating his Mr. Softy swirl for breakfast, and he's like, God, can't wait to ask Carlos Mendoza or not Carlos Mendoza, David Stearns about a Pete Alonso extension today. It's really maybe he'll answer it correctly this time.
Every day, everyone. It just seems like it's still good, and it's like it's top of mind. I got in the weeds about it. I ate some garbage. I posted it
You
on Mets
did,
Twitter.
you did.
I want I wanted some tweets. I wanted some engagement.
Yeah, some interaction.
We're
Yeah.
engaging like crazy. We're averaging like almost 500,000 impressions a week on Messed Up Twitter. It's been amazing.
Oh yeah.
Thank you,
Shout
guys.
out James.
Tweets have also been fire. Just not to pat myself in the back, but they've been great. But
It's all
it's
James. I've completely given him the keys to Twitter. I'm like, take it. It's
yeah,
yours.
nothing at all. But it's just still it's like so fascinating that every single writer, every single reporter, Evan Roberts, Jenny Metz, everyone is like posting a poll. Who would you rather sign? Who would you rather do? Like it'd be stupid not to get the clicks if you're going to give them
Yeah.
out anyway. But I'm just like it's fascinating that the conversation is like Pete Soto extension. What are we doing? It's a disgrace that the Mets don't sign him. It's funny. It's just funny because nothing's going to happen for almost a full year.
No.
We have 10 months until we're going to get news about this. So everyone strap in, enjoy it. And like the picture went viral of Pete talking to Cohen. It's like, I
Yeah.
really think he was, hey, Steve, can I get 30 million? No, I don't think he said that.
Hey, when do you think you're gonna pay me, bro? Like,
Dude, this contract stuff is kind of bogus. Like, I just want to play.
it's
It's
kind of
like,
harshing my vibe, bro. Like, can we just
I,
figure this out, man?
well, now you're doing like Pete Surfer. Pete's not a surfer. Pete's Florida.
I'm yeah, but I think Pete. We've spoke to Pete. I think Pete's got a little bro in him, like a
He is,
yo,
bro.
dude.
Yeah.
Like,
But again, otherwise, like the vibes seem very high in Met spring training. Everyone
yes,
seems like they're having a good time. Christian Scott and Mike Vassler throwing, really excited about them. Carlos Mendoza is doing some media availability. I think he's starting to get in the good graces with the
like him a
reporters and the
lot.
fans.
Like him a lot.
Always did, always have. The guy seems great. Seems like exactly what you want as a baseball manager. Someone who could walk down the streets in Manhattan and nobody will know it's him.
Yes. Oh my God. It's the best thing that could ever happen is if he's unrecognizable, going from the most recognizable manager we've maybe ever had in our lifetime to someone who, like you said, just looks like a person, just
Uh,
looks like a dude.
Second most recognizable manager we ever had in our lifetime, but the most recognizable was only the manager for 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
that's fair. Well, he was Bush Shoulders not more recognizable than Carlos Beltran.
No, he is not more recognizable. That is for sure.
No.
But in terms of guys who manage games,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, totally. And it's fine. Like it so doesn't matter at all. Like it matters
No.
a lot like in game, but like my uncle's still pissed off about it that he's never managed a major league game before. It seems not ready for it. I'm excited for just again, we're getting back to baseball, ready to get back to baseball. And
Yep.
getting back to baseball, now we're gonna start talking about baseball because we even us doing 20 minutes of spring training, I'm mad about that because
I'm
there was
done. Yeah,
nothing
I've
to
had
talk
enough.
about.
Yeah.
That was stupid. Just a lot of Harrison Bader talking, G-Man Choi, whatever. But we want to talk about who's the most important player in the Mets this year because it's a conversation that was strung up, like we said earlier, by Anthony Tacoma saying that it was Starling Marte, which I think Mark and I and a lot of other people in the world don't necessarily agree with because I think Marte has
No.
a range of outcomes that are like kind of like here. Like it's either he's healthy or he's not. And if he's healthy, he's
Yes.
going to hit singles and doubles and steal bases and like be fun to have around. But if he's not healthy, just not going to play like last year. And then
I'm
but this team, what?
I'm laughing because like even just like the sentence of like him being the most important player, like I'm a huge Starling Marte fan. I loved him when they signed him. I've wanted him forever. That was probably against my judgment to love him as much as I did. He was like 5 years older than when I first really started liking Starling Marte. So there were some bad signs on my part with a bad take, and I can take that. But it's just like funny to say because like there are things out there that like these writers or like people can use to their advantage, like these projections that are just available freely on Fangraphs, and like He's projected for like a 100 WRC plus. Like, in what world is a league average player the most important guy on the team? Like, sure, if Starling Marte some way, somehow goes back to being a 134 WRC plus guy like he was in 2022, fuck yeah, he's the most important player. The Mets are doing crazy shit if this guy is an elite hitter in 2024. But realistically, at what, 35 years of age after major groin surgery, to say he's the make or break for this team is nuts. Like, the team will be better if he's better. No shit. Like, that's an idiot take. Wow, if the players play better, the team will be good. But like, if he is league average, the Mets don't. The needle wasn't like that. Wasn't the difference between them making the playoffs or being a World Series winner.
No, and the worst part about Starling Marte is that the last time he played 140 games,
It's probably when I really liked him. Let's go 2018.
it was exactly 2018. He was 29 years
Yeah,
old. The last
yeah.
time he played 150 games,
It's probably never.
it was when he was 2015, 26. The only time he ever played 150
There we go. I
games.
was close. Yeah,
Oh yeah, almost a full decade ago. But again, that's not a skill set, and there is a world where Starling Marte is probably like 5% better than league average, and he's an engine like the middle of the Mets order. I don't think with this new regime, Starling Marte is ever hitting two again. I
I
think that's a
pray to
good thing.
God. Pray to
Yeah, I don't
God.
want that. Mr. No Extra Base hits. But I also think that there's a world where he's like a 270 hitter who steals 35, 40 bags
Which
in
would be
130
awesome.
games, which is great. Probably DHs for 20 of them, plays some right field, throws a couple guys out. Like, that's a lot of fun. But what?
I think there's a lot of value too to and maybe this is a crazy take, but towards the bottom of the order, like having a guy like Marte who is just going to hit, who is just going to move the order at times, because as we've seen, like the bottom of the order for the Mets has been a bit of a slog in years past, where it's like, God, nobody gets on base, nobody hits. He's not an on base guy, but he will hit for average if he is, healthy. He's going to hit 270, like you said. And the fact that he can turn that single into a double at the bottom of the order. I like being a
Easily.
little bit aggressive down there, where maybe you have some weaker hitters who a single now scores a run rather than, a single moves him to second or moves him to third. He gives you a little more athleticism at the bottom of the order, which that bottom of the order desperately lacks.
Yeah, that's where Starling Marte has the upside, because I even when Buck Showalter in his 1999 baseball brain was hitting him second ahead of Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso, like, I didn't really love him stealing bases there, because I don't
No.
want to take strikes away from the best hitters on my team. This was a weird thing with Acuna last year and Olsen, where Olsen was weirdly hit better when Acuna wasn't on base.
Yeah.
I saw this stat the other day and I was like, wow. And thought about it because he just didn't have to worry about like taking that first strike because you knew Acuna was going. And it was easy because like Olsen's going to hit a single, double, a home run. He's going to drive the runner in. He had like 125, whatever it was, RBIs. But there's something about that mental aspect of like, I can have my at bat and this is my at bat. Foolish
Yes.
Baseball the other day put out one of the best pieces of baseball content I think ever,
So sick.
which was all about just the way that different counts affect bat hitting results. It's like from like an analytic standpoint, from like an entertainment standpoint, from a graphic standpoint, like it was fantastic. I can't believe
So good.
he only put that together. And usually his videos like take like what, like a month, like 3 weeks in between them. But
He works a
it's
long time. Yeah.
no, I'm saying like, and the fact that he's making videos that can be acknowledged from like a guy named Tom Tango, who's like the father of like modern sabermetrics, but also like every single 12-year-olds on their phone and in the middle school cafeteria. It's like that kind of range is amazing. But the big crux of that is that like if you're 0-1 or you're 1-0, the difference in your results go between Julio Rodriguez and Paul DeJong. So it's a lot to wait. Even if you get the guy in second base, but now you're down 0-1, it's much harder for you to get on base and you to do the damage. So a guy like Marte, who his glory right now is hitting a single and stealing second base, possibly if his legs work, that is much more valuable, I think, in the 5 and 6 spot than the 2 spot by a
Totally.
lot. And I think this
Totally.
front office now is going to realize that. And I think that on opening day, you probably see him at the bottom half of the order, around the top half. I hope at least. But that being said, he's still not the most important player in this team.
No.
And I think he's very far from it. And I think Mark and I now have a list of guys who we think can and should be considered the most important players in this team, especially for a team that, by all intents and purposes, is about a 500 ball club. We can go 5 games up, we can go 5 games down. Things break right, things break wrong. This is a fringe playoff team right now, as much as some fans think we're a 70-win baseball team. And there's a
Yeah.
real world where good results from a few players push the season to becoming one that a lot of people are not very excited about, the one that can become very, very exciting in July, August, September, October.
Yeah, and I think maybe even not saying most important players, because like the most important players on the team are clearly Lindor, Nimmo, Alonso. Like, we're not going to talk
Yes.
about them. You know how good they are. Lock them in for what they've got. They're studs. They're doing their thing. This is like even more like the X factors, or like guys that we need to play well in order to be a good team this upcoming season. And the first one is Kodai Senga.
Yeah.
Kodai Senga has to be last year's Kodai Senga, or at least close to it. It might be tough to repeat because he was just so phenomenal last year in his rookie season, but he has to be an ace. The Mets don't have one right now. He is their ace theoretically in that rotation. He has to be one of the best pitchers in baseball again this upcoming season for the Mets to really be successful.
I'll say this. I think that was reactionary Mark. I think that was YouTube Mark right there who's saying he has to
Why?
be one of the best pitchers in baseball for the Mets to be successful. I don't think that's technically true at all. I
Okay,
think he
okay,
has to
why?
be fine for the Mets to be really good. I think he just has to be like quite good. I think he has to be one of like in terms of ace, like one of the 30 best starting pitchers in baseball instead of last
Okay,
year where he was one of like the six best pitchers in baseball.
that's fair.
And
That's fair.
and yeah, I think there's like a difference there between like having like last year Senga had like the fifth lowest ERA, but again, like he was like 30th in terms of like FIP and
Yeah,
Sierra. And I think a big reason for that is that he like some of it was really good, but some of it I think like obviously there could be some regression coming where the Ghost Fork, it was the best pitch in baseball last year. No one could hit it. I spent a lot of time, made a crazy video today, every single Ghost Fork whiff. And it was honestly fascinating. Happy it did really well on Twitter, but it's just like watching it over and over again, I was like, this pitch is fucking insane. Like
yeah.
people were swinging at that pitch when it was bouncing like 2 feet in front of the plate sometimes.
Like
Like
legitimately, how are you going to hit it? I don't know
I have no
how.
idea. The first Ghost Fork whip Kodai Senga got the whole year. Jesus Sanchez threw his bat like into the second row of the fan because he just let go of it. Because he was like, "What the hell was that?" So it's like you can see this pitch on video, and I'm sure all these guys did before Kodai came to the league last year, and I'm sure they were watching it a lot as the season went on. But it's still so good, you just can't really hit it. So that's part of it. But another part of the concern and regression with Kodai is the fact that he was so good last year, even despite the fact that he threw so many balls, allowed so many walks, and was behind in the count so often.
That was also
What?
in the Foolish Baseball video as well.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, that was another. He was Kodai was featured in this foolish baseball video because Senga was by far the best pitcher in baseball last year, and he was behind in the count. Part of that was because he always had the ghost fork as the hammer, like which was a pitch that he never really threw in the strike zone, but he always guys were still swinging at it. But he developed a cutter, as we told you guys through the season last year, that kind of changed him from being someone who in April and May was like in the middle trying to find his footing to where June, July, and August, where he was basically the best pitcher in the league. Said it again, ad nauseum last year, but he didn't allow more than 3 earned runs after June 17th of last season. His ERA was 2.4 from that moment on. It was disgusting. One of the best pitchers in the league. All about that cutter. But that cutter coming on midseason, being his like soft contact inducer, especially when he was behind in the count, kind of his like his little parachute, is getting him out of trouble pitch. Hitters saw it more. More people are going to have it on video this year. And more people are going to know that when they're behind, when they're ahead in the count against Kodai Senga, that cutter is coming. So maybe don't try to do too much damage. Maybe instead of trying to take a big wallop of swing, just try and surf that pitch into right field. Like maybe that's part of the equation next year with Kodai Senga. It's also kind of scary that he had the third highest walk rate last year among all qualified pitchers. That is scary to me. But Blake Snell had the highest walk rate and he won the Cy Young. So maybe it's not as scary as it should be. I don't know about that. But Blake Snell has 2 super out pitches. Kodai Senga only has 1. I don't know about that. A lot of runners on base, behind the count a lot for his ERA being as low as it was, especially when he was outrunning all of his estimators. But like even if he's a 3.5, 3.6 guy and strikes out like 28% of hitters, like you think he's probably projected to right now, like that to me is still one of like the 20 or 30 best starting pitchers in baseball. And as long as the H word doesn't happen, the I word doesn't happen, and everything on the right side of his body is good, like that's again the most important thing to me, rather than like matching last year.
Now, surely that also piggybacks off of a guy who is also crazy important to this team, like Severino, like
Yes.
bouncing back. Because, like, if Senga's going to have that regression, which he's going to, he is going to regress. Like, that's just, he has to. If he doesn't, like, all of a sudden we're like, well, holy shit. Like, how did we get this fucking guy? Where did we find him? But, like, he should regress, at least, I should say. Where Severino, it's like, that's where he can step up and make it feel less bad is if Severino can step into this rotation. And I'm not going to say go back to being an ace. That's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who's been pretty stinky the last couple of years. But like he does have the ability to at least go back to being a very good pitcher. Like we know that fastball's got life. That changeup looks like it's pretty good from what we've seen from the videos so far. And he has that wipeout slider. Like there's a world where Severino can be that kind of missing piece in that rotation to make it feel a lot longer than it currently looks.
Totally. And we're not even that far removed from Severino being really good. I think that's something that a lot of people forget when they talk about Luis Severino. In 2022, he threw 100 innings because he got hurt, obviously, but he had 3.18 ERA. He struck out 25% of hitters. Like, that's not very far away from being like, okay, this is a guy. Like, this is legitimately a guy here. And he still, as he was doing that, wasn't good against lefties, but he also still pitched in Yankee Stadium. And the big problem
Yeah.
with Severino last year, when he just was one of the worst pitchers in the whole league, was that every time the ball went in the air, it went out of the ballpark. It was a 20% home run to fly ball rate. That was like
Yeah.
Edwin Diaz 2019 levels. So it's like, that's something that, again, will regress in the right direction. And he still throws 97 miles an hour. So I don't know. There's a world where Luis Severino finds that changeup, has the weapon against lefties, has the regular fastball slider against righties, and he beats his projections by a lot. Like he's someone who can beat the projections. Whereas Sang is a guy who I just want him to hit the projections. Where Severino right now is projected to be like a 4.6 ERA guy. Like if he's a
Yeah.
4.6 ERA guy, the Mets are probably not making the playoffs. Just probably, unless something cool happens. Unless like Tyler McGill clicks. Like I don't know.
Or
I'm
Christian
gonna wait
Scott
for that.
gets called up, and you're like, "Oh my god, Christian Scott is him!" Like, holy shit, we got
Yeah.
him.
Unless I'm right about everything with Christian Scott there. But also, a funny thing, the Mets, I was looking a lot about like war clusters of like best guys on best teams. And we talked about their position players, Nimmo, Pete, and Lindor. And last year, those three guys had the ninth highest cumulative war for any trio in Major League Baseball. The only guys that were ahead of them, had written down right here, were the Dodgers and the Braves, obviously. Then there was a huge gap. Then the Rangers. Then there was another huge gap. Then the Mariners, because Cal Raleigh had such a good year, and JP
Mm.
Crawford. But then another huge gap, and then the Diamondbacks, the Astros, the Cubs, the Orioles, and then we were tied with the Padres and the Rays at 13.1 F WAR for your top three players on your team.
And I think one thing that's interesting to note too is that I mean, the Dodgers and the Braves have first basemen included in those trios, I assume, because they have Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, who are just kind of defy the
Freaks.
position, yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of value. Where one of our guys is playing a position that, relatively speaking, doesn't accumulate a lot of WAR. Like it's really hard for a first baseman to accumulate 5 WAR. Like a shortstop, there's an easier path. Be good
Yeah.
defensively, be a pretty good hitter. So to even be in that conversation, in that top 10, with one of those guys being a first baseman in that conversation, like that's pretty big to show you how good all three of these guys are.
No, a lot. And Nimmo and Lindor were both top 35 in the whole league in WAR. Nimmo, I think, was the highest player all the whole season in WAR that wasn't either Shohei Ohtani, a Brave, or a Dodger, which I think is
Nice.
pretty cool. I think he was eighth in the season. And then that's also Pete having the worst year of his career by full half a win, 2.8. Jeff McNeil being worth three full less wins than he was the year before, 2.7
Yeah.
versus 5.6. And I think that's another part we were talking about, like the positional change, where last year McNeil started playing basically only second base, where that I think you accumulate less WAR than just playing outfield defense on Fangraphs FWAR. And then Álvarez being right next to them at 2.6 WAR is a 21-year-old catcher who for like half the year didn't really know what the fuck he was doing. And I'll
Yeah.
talk about Álvarez a little bit in a second, but it's not crazy to say that core is playoff caliber. But then I was talking about this in terms of the Mets pitching core, where we're talking about Severino being the X factor. That's because he has the guy with the widest range of outcomes. I think that's where we're
Yes.
kind of basing this conversation over who's the most important players to the Mets' success, rather than who's the most important players like on the team, which I think is how Tacoma described it. But who's the most important player to the Mets' success? How does the team get over the top? Severino is not projected right now in the Mets' top three in terms of pitching WAR. Those three are Senga, Quintana, and Sean Manaea, who Senga, we talked about already. Quintana and Manaea are not sexy. They're not these high range of outcome guys. Manaea, I guess, is a little bit because he's never really put all these little pieces he has together.
Got
But
the hair.
the hair's been great spring training. One of the best videos we got so
Aquaman.
far is like, yeah, him just coming fro out. But in terms of projections, those three pitchers are 16th in the whole league, exactly middle of the pack
Hmm.
in terms of top three guys in rotation projected WAR, which is like, okay, as bad as we think the Mets rotation is, with the X factor still being outside of that top three, it's like there's something that can happen there. And Adrian Hauser being a five, who's like, in terms of baseball, a fine five,
Great
as
five. Yeah.
as fine of a five as you can get. Like, go out there for 150 innings and give me 4.3 ERA. I don't want to think about you every fifth day. So I think there is something about where this Mets team's floor is right now compared to last year. People are saying like, last year the team was better and we were 10 wins worse. Mike Petriello had a great tweet about it, basically saying like, last year's win total has nothing to do with next year's win total, really. It's just about
Yep.
like you're in the projections you guys have for this year. And the Mets have weirdly less rotation question marks now than they did last year, despite the upside's much lower. I understand that, but the question marks and the question marks are less and the floor is higher.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Because I mean, part of the floor last year was there was a couple guys that just probably might not pitch for a minute, and that's kind of what happened to start the year. And what do you know? The Mets came out crazy slow to start the season, and it kind of just put them in a malaise that carried throughout the rest of the season. So, yeah, I totally. I'm really surprised they were 16. That's kind of like encouraging a little bit that they were
It
middle of
is.
the pack because that if there is a concern with this team, as we've said it all off season, it is the pitching. It is the starting pitching. Do they have enough? Are they going to be good enough to compete? Because you can score as many runs, but if you give up more, it's going to be really, really hard to win the game. So, yeah, Severino is that guy for sure that could be a difference maker in that rotation. Then even moving on to the bullpen, we know Diaz, but now it's about finding like that next guy up. And we loved a lot of the guys that they've brought in: Diekman, Fuji, Jorge Lopez being the new guys coming in there. And then you have Rayleigh Ottavino coming back as well. And Drew Smith, still a part of the team. like that's a pretty solid six other arms to add to the bullpen.
In terms of bullpens in the league, I think it's not like you're never gonna. I'm never gonna say it's a top 10 bullpen in the league. I'm definitely gonna say
No,
it's like there's
11.
some yeah. No, but there's something, like, at least there's I look at this bullpen, it's not like the Royals who just acquire, like, John Schreiber for, like, an
Yeah.
exciting single A pitcher where I'm like, "You like, I hope your ERA's 3.8, I hope you strike out, I hope you strike out 25% of hitters you face," but I'm there's juice here, there's we have multiple guys now throwing 97 miles an hour, 4 technically by my count. We have 2 guys who throw 100. We have 2 exciting lefties. Like, there's a world right now where, like, the Mets have real guys, like, step up and become like the Batman to Diaz's Robin, to just be corny as hell for a moment there. Like, Rayleigh's the most solid. I think he has the most, like, stable projection where I'm like, I trust what Brooks Raley is. Ottavino's done it before, but I think that he's probably at this point in his career more of like a middle guy,
Yeah,
fireman, than like
step
a late
back.
inning guy. Yeah. But then I think like Fuji has the highest upside, as Trevor May said on our podcast that was quoted by SNY. Shout out SNY for saying that it was on our podcast on Instagram.
Finally.
We appreciate that. And in the 7th paragraph of their article on Instagram, in the graphic, we love that. And then Diekman's like somewhere in between like Fuji and Ottavino, where it's like, you've done it before, you're older, like, can you do it again? I think you can. Maybe we want to see you do some stuff. And then Jorge Lopez has been literally elite the most recently. 2
He
years
was
ago,
nasty with the
one of the best
Orioles
relievers
too
in
last
baseball.
year.
So like, there's 5, and I didn't even mention Drew Smith, who I think we still like probably more than anybody else in the world. But I still like.
Definitely.
I don't think he's the worst pitcher in baseball, like some Mets fans do. And it was pretty bad
No.
season last year. It was a bad season last year. I'm not gonna tell you it wasn't, but I still think there's some life in that arm. We just named 5 relievers who are like have legitimate upside, who and
Yeah.
that's also with having the best closer in baseball. Kind of. It's not because he didn't miss a year. I'll give you guys top 3 right now. I'll say it. I'll give it top 3 with Hader and Duran. But there's a realistic world one of those guys becomes like a true number 2 in this bullpen, whether it be Fuji, Diekman, Rayleigh, Jorge Lopez, even possibly Ottavino, if everything works in the exact right possible way it can. But probably the least likely, maybe more like the other 4. But like, there's a world where someone becomes a very real 8th inning guy, very real setup man, a very real number 2 option. It's like, okay, now this bullpen has teeth.
Who's your pick right now? If you had to pick right now.
It's got to be Fuji.
Oh, really?
We're all on the Fuji train. It got
Oh,
to be Fuji.
I'm going Jorge Lopez. I'm going Jorge Lopez. What he did at the end of the year with the Orioles, and you opened up my eyes to it because I didn't really
Yeah,
see it. He was striking out like 33% of the guys and walked like
yeah,
3%. Like
yeah. It's the last month.
that's
Mhm.
disgusting.
It
Yeah.
is. But again, he only did that with the Orioles. He left the Orioles and he came back. He did it with the Orioles. In between, did not do it. So we're not. I don't think we're the Orioles. We're not.
To be fair though, he was like I guess the Twins are a smart organization
Yeah.
relatively, but like the Marlins are stupid. So
Yes. Which is fine. But again, we both like went with like the sexy picks. It's definitely probably going to wind up just being Brooks Raley, who's just
oh,
good,
for sure. Yeah,
super
a million
solid.
percent.
But the fact that we have another lefty, so Raley can be an 8th inning guy because we know how good he is getting hitters at both sides of the plate. Like, there's a lot of life in this bullpen for some good stuff to happen, which is fun and better than we felt the last few years about it.
100%. Let's bring it back now to the offensive side of things because, again, there definitely are some guys that could be a huge impact. I'm going to start it with Jeff McNeil because McNeil was, for lack of a better term, terrible last year.
Bad.
He was a shell of himself. We've seen this happen before with him, which is a little bit concerning. Like, love Jeff, friend of the channel, friend of the podcast, but it is a little bit concerning. And the way that he plays, it does lead for this volatility a little bit when you are just like a soft contact guy who relies on hitting the ball where they're not. And that's just hard sometimes in baseball. Saw it happen in 2021. We saw it happen in 2023. We know he has the injury as well with basically like he got the elbow injury going into the season as well. So
Especially toward
probably,
UCL.
yeah, so probably not going to have a ton of power, but man, like if McNeil it's crazy because he has 4 years of being an elite hitter, elite. But those 2 sprinkled in there just give you some doubt.
Yeah, they're not in order. That's the problem.
Yeah, 3 of them, and then the last 3 years, 2 of them have been not great. So it's like I'm not even talking about like getting back like the 326 like batting champion McNeil, like just getting McNeil back to like that like 290 300 range, getting on base, getting those doubles down the line. Like that can be a huge difference maker too in this lineup. Just make it so much longer because when he's playing well, he is really awesome. Like he's fantastic. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, winning the bag title 2022 is like the conversation everybody has, but he also had a 380 on base percentage that year,
Yeah.
which is like disgustingly good. And that year, like Jeff McNeil always gets flack because everyone immediately goes to Baseball Savant and looks at the sliders and they're like, oh, Jeff McNeil has never hit the ball hard. You know what? Jeff McNeil never will hit the ball hard. That's just not what
No,
Jeff McNeil does. And I think that there were a lot of mitigating factors last year that kind of led to McNeil, for lack of a better term, losing it a little bit during the season. I think that no shift kind of fucked with his head. And
definitely.
Buck Showalter said that on this podcast. And
We had to cut it out.
I don't think it made it out to the public, but he said it on this podcast. He was like, I'm a little worried about Jeff without the shift. Like that was part of his game plan, like finding that shift, hitting it where they ain't. So it's like now when you're so used to that, which is funny because he'd be so used to that because he played baseball his whole life without that. But now you
Yeah,
play baseball with that for a few years, and you're like, there's an obvious pocket right there. I have a base hit. I'm just gonna take my base hit. I'm gonna have a 380 on base percentage. I'm gonna be worth almost 6 WAR, and we're gonna go to the playoffs. Nothing else gonna matter. But without that there, he had to kind of recalibrate who he was as a hitter. And I think you just thinking a lot. And we know just from Jeff seeing him on the field, like just the way he carries himself, like things can have a things can snowball for him. They can. And like his emotions get the better of him sometimes on the baseball field. He's a noted red ass guy where he just kind of gets a little
yeah,
crazy when things aren't going well. And the same thing in 2021 as it was in 2023. Maybe just not a number guy. Maybe he just
yeah.
loves even
Maybe,
numbers.
yeah. I
Maybe
could see him
all
being an even number guy.
but 2019 was amazing, but that was super happy fun ball. So well, if we throw that one out, he's really just an even number guy.
He does wear the number one though, so I don't know. I think he might be an odd number guy.
Maybe he's not a number guy. I don't know, but it's just things snowball. And also, I bet a big part of this with Jeff is that like he signed the contract, and Jeff has been scrappy underdog every second he was a major leaguer. So you sign that contract, you're like, I want to be worth it. I love this team. I love this city. I love everyone around me. I'm grateful for the owners. Like I want to cash in on what I'm worth. And like you start squeezing the bat tight, the pressure's on, and you kind of lose a little bit. Like Jeff McNeil's the best player he can be when he's loose and he's putting the ball where it has to be. And like last year he chased more than he had the year before. When you're chasing more than more than when you do,
Pressing.
that is big time that you're pressing. Yes. And a big thing about Jeff, like this is a stat I never really look at all. It's on Baseball Savant. It's called the sweet spot percentage. But I understand like it's not because it's not barreling because it's when you barreling's when you hit the ball in the air at certain exit velocities. Jeff's never going to barrel because he doesn't do either of those things very much. But the sweet spot is at least still getting to that barrel of the bat, no matter how hard the ball is hit, it's still going to be hit pretty hard and the launch angle of it. And Jeff, in 2022, when he was amazing, he was one of the best in the league at that. It was 94th percentile. Last year, 20th percentile. So that's a big change. Just being able to hit the ball on the bat where you want it, get the most out of it. And I don't know, it just like his regression now seems like the most obvious in the whole team, where it's like, I don't think he's going to be 330 batting average batting champ again. But if he's 290 with 350 on base, like that again suddenly becomes like a 4-win player again, 770, 760 OPS. Like now you're cooking with Jeff McNeil again, where last year he was, for lack of a better term, kind of a black hole the whole year.
Yeah, no, it was tough for sure. And I think Lindor got him the car now, right? So I
He
think, yeah, I
did.
mean, I think I'm gonna say this felt like that was like looming over it because every fucking time they talked about those two, like, you buy you the car, yeah, he's like, nah, not yet. I'm like, hey, how about we stop doing this? Like, what if we don't keep asking him if his teammates spent $50,000 on him yet? Like,
Yeah. Another cool thing about Jeff is that he's never been a base stealer. He's still like 3 to 5 a year. But to do rules last year, he wasn't even on base that much, but he still stole 10 for the first
yeah,
time. He's still like basically 50th percentile runner. He's another guy like with Marte in the lower half of the order. Get a single, steal second base. Like get
totally.
aggressive. Let's start running a
Or
little bit.
or if like Marte hits in front of him, hit and run with those two. God, I'd
Yeah,
love
it'd
a
be
hit and run
great.
with those
Night right
two.
there, 5-6 in the order, 6-7,
Yeah,
depending on what happens with Beatty. And next guy we're going to talk about. Like, there's a lot of potential for these two to be like a little smash and dash at the bottom of the order.
totally.
A couple like little scrappy guys. Like you
Which is
want
so
that.
funny. It's like that's what Buck Showalter would have loved.
Yes, but at 1 and 2, that's the
Yes,
problem.
yeah, 1 and 2, yeah. He's like, "I want that to be the most common at bats possible. I want hit and run as much as we possibly can."
Yeah, I mean, I think this team is going to do some scrappy baseball things this year. That was like a staple of these Brewers teams. Like they would run a lot. Like they would put
Yeah,
like they weren't probably didn't have as many contact oriented guys as Mets team because this Mets team was built by people who might have been a little like I just like trying to do too much in terms of like being afraid of the ballpark. We gave like Zalzman the front office credit for doing this a few years ago. They might have overdone it, and now they
yeah.
still need some power, but they still have these guys in the team, so you might as well play the strengths. And the strengths of the team are probably going to be contact and speed, especially at the bottom of the order. I think that's a fine strategy to employ to try and get the most out of these guys who you need a lot out of to become a playoff team.
It is funny how just, like, how baseball changes, like, even, like, year to year to year of what's going on, but, like, even, like, 10 years ago, it's like, "Man, need the speed at the top of the order." Now we're like, "Speed at the bottom of the order is pretty cool," like, and then it can become the top of the order when you have the actual good hitters coming up and those guys are on base. Wow, you could really generate some runs here.
I mean, they always say fourth in the order, second leadoff. You lead off the
Yeah.
second most innings of any position in the lineup besides number one. So like,
It's like what they used to tell the kids in little league when you hit ninth, you're like, "You're the second leadoff hitter." You're like, that doesn't make any sense. How does that work?"
nah, that's you just tell me because I couldn't hit and I wanted to get on base and use my speed. But I was like, yeah, let me do that. I'm second leadoff. Basically, I'm last. But there's something to that, and like I think that a lot of this though will come into more into focus when we know where Francisco Alvarez is this year, because
Yeah.
he's my pick for the most important player in this team. I don't think that there's someone in this team who can change the Mets bottom line more than Francisco Alvarez. Maybe it is Kodai Senga, but as long as everything stays intact, maybe it's Severino if we get 2022 Severino instead of 2023 Severino. But even still, like, I'm not giving Severino more than 140 innings. Like, best case scenario, like how many he has to spend a month on the IL.
Yeah.
Just has to. Like, everything there is too tight. It's just that it is. But Alvarez is the guy who, like, if he goes off, if he does what he's capable of doing, he suddenly becomes like a 35 home run, 350 on base guy. He's like a legitimate four hitter. He's the best offensive catcher in baseball. Like, this is all within range. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't even crazy to think about. Like, this is all there. Like, even right now, projections have him at 23 homers, 740 OPS, 3 WAR, which is basically where he was last year. I think it was 25 homers, 24 homers, like 720 OPS, like 2.6 WAR. Like, that's like where the median projection is. That's the 50th percentile for the 22-year-old super prospect catcher. Second most home runs for catchers in all the league last year, only behind Kyle Raleigh. What if he goes ape shit? Like, what if he does? Because he can
Yeah.
go ape shit. Like, he might just do it. And like, he's doing all the right things in spring training right now. There was a video that went around of him giving Kevin Parada framing instructions.
Yeah.
Kevin Parada's older than Francisco Alvarez, guys. He's older than him. And Francisco Alvarez, like, this is how you should do it. Like, he's already taking a veteran role. He's 22. Like, he's younger than my little sister. Like, this is like, it's insane to think about. Like, he would be draft eligible right now. He
Yeah.
already is one of the best offensive catchers in baseball, and I think that there's so much of how Alvarez improved in season last year, offensively. Because defensively, he was better than anybody thought. Leadership wise, he's better than anybody thought. His English, he's nearly fluent in that. He's giving
Yeah.
Allen doesn't even need to be around anymore. Francisco Alvarez talking to the media himself. He's just there for moral support, wearing his cool clothes. That's it. I think fairly is the most shots we've taken at the organization in a long time. I think
Yeah, I think so. There's a few that have been
it
taken.
was a crazy couple of days. I think we're finally officially back. We got kicked in the ass enough, but a whole segment making fun of Anthony DeComo. The boys are back in town. But Alvarez did so many things last year in season that really like locked me into being like, this guy could super be elite. By the end of the year, he was better than league average in chase rate, something he was really struggling with in the first half. Second half walk rate was 11%. 11%. It was 5% in
Really
the
good.
first half. He doubled it in the second half. Like, he's just
Double it,
learning
give it
on
to the next person.
literally, he's learning on the fly, and that's kind of the thing about being an elite prospect, becoming an elite baseball player. His whiffs are the only thing that are still really high, but that's because he takes fucking hacks. He's
Yeah.
being aggressive in the right places. He's swinging about league average in the zone. He's not chasing. Like, right there, you're like, oh, this is the stuff right there. And there's two things that are happening with Francisco Alvarez last year as a hitter, where if he can even identify one of these issues and fix them, he will become, again, one of the best offensive catchers in baseball and one of the biggest X factors in any team in baseball, and possibly like a legit burgeoning superstar on the likes of all these other guys we've seen take these massive steps the last few years. Like, he could be a 5, 6 WAR player. Like, I don't even think that's impossible. Seriously, like, he can compete with Francisco Lindor being the most valuable player in this team. Number one thing is that Francisco Alvarez isn't really good at identifying pitches right now in the shadow of the zone. This was another big part of their Foolish Baseballs video, where the shadow of the zone is where the pitcher always wins. Because
Yes.
sometimes you get that pitcher's a called strike. Sometimes the ball, but it's a close ball, keeps the hitter thinking. But a lot of times the hitter swings at it and he makes contact with it. It's never good contact. This is where Aaron Nola has built his entire career, where he's going to make $300 million. This is why Kyle Hendricks has been what he's been for the last couple of years. Like, this is why Greg Maddux, one of the best pitchers of all time. If
Yep.
you can live your whole life in that shadow of the zone as a pitcher, you literally always win. Now, Alvarez was bad last year. He had a negative 21 run value in the shadow of the zone. That was bottom 10 percentile in the league. And I think that half of that was because, again, he doesn't chase very often. So that's a zone I think he was focused on, being like, okay, like, if it's going to be a strike, I want to hit it. Like, if it's going to be a ball, I'm going to leave it. But that shadow right there, him just being aggressive, him swinging a lot more than average, 40% first pitch swing rate last year, which was much higher in league average, like 23%, one of the highest in the whole league. 40% first pitch swing. I think as pitchers realize very obviously that if we throw a pitch, again, if you have to locate this as a pitcher, that's part of command, more so than control. Whereas, like, I need to put this pitch there, and the pitch is going to end up there. Alvarez is going to swing at it, and you're going to get out of the at bat in a good way, because this is a scary hitter, and like, we just got him to roll the ball over the second base. We're not worried about that. And that whole thing about him not being able to hit the shadow kind of matches the way he was pitched, and a sign that pitchers realize how good he is. He by far saw the most pitches of any zone last year, low and away. In that little corner, low and away in the zone, and then the big chunk outside the zone. This is all found on Baseball Savant on their zones tab on the StatCast page. 21% of all pitches he saw the whole year were low and away outside the zone. And then low and away in the zone were another 18%. So we're pushing nearly 40% of all the pitches he saw last year in that one little cluster, low and away. By far, most of anything he saw. And his ground ball rate on those pitches were over 60%, where in the season, it was about 44%. So there's not a lot of damage being done in those pitches. So being pitched there and being a little jumpy, it makes a lot of sense that that is where not his hole is, because I'll talk about that in a second, like where his hole is in the zone, but that's
Mhm.
where it's the easiest for pitchers to limit his damage.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense. It's not an easy pitch to hit. That's
No,
it,
it's
like
very hard.
conceptually thinking of the strike zone. Where would you want to throw to a guy who crushes the ball, pulls it for 450-foot tanks? How about low and away, the hardest pitch for you to reach and pull to left field? Like it just conceptually makes sense as well.
Totally. And that's why the key for that for Alvarez is spitting on that pitch and
Yeah.
just taking that pitch. Like that's where you do the best. Like I think also in this video from Foolish, I think Freddie Freeman and Jordan Alvarez were the only hitters who had positive run value on pitches in the shadow
Yes. And
because they
Freddie
had this.
Freeman's disgusting at
Yeah, it was
it.
like plus like 17 runs. Like, how the
Yeah.
hell did you do that? But that's just a lot of that is based on just like your hands, like how good your hands are. You could get to that pitch a little inside the strike zone. Like you could put that one low and outside and like get the double on it. Like that's just special. Not many guys in the league could do that. Two guys the whole league did that last year.
Freddie Freeman genuinely, I say this, has some of the best hitting hands I've ever seen in my entire life. Like
Yeah,
what he's able to do at the plate doesn't really make sense. He's just so fucking good. Like it's insane.
there's something else very different about those two guys and Francisco Alvarez, and it's very biological. Those two have insane arms. Like
Yeah.
their arms are so long. You've ever seen Jordan Alvarez in person? Like his arms, his hands are like at his knees. You're like, how's he doing that? And Freddie Freeman is also like wingspan god. Like that's how he scoops everything at first base. But those two aren't the norm. And I think that if Francisco Alvarez, as he continues to progress as a hitter, finds ways to spit on that low and outside pitch and avoid those pitches in the shadow, like infinitely. If he just starts taking those pitches and gets to ball one, gets to 1-0 and says swing at that pitch and putting it in play right away, like we're looking at like a 10% difference WRC plus. Like we're looking at a jump. And the next thing is something that's been Alvarez's hole again for forever. This is what scouts have been talking about him since he was 17 years old already in low A. Is that he's always had this hole high in the zone. And that's been something about how hard he swings, how high he swings. Like the fact he does have a bit of natural uppercut. He does really well in that low and inside pitch, that low middle pitch. Even when he barrels up the low and outside pitch, he gets around on it. He can really do some damage with it. That was the pitch that he hit against the marquee home run for Andrew Chafin last year. Like that was low and outside. I think it was a changeup. And he just put the barrel down there and just got a little too much plate. And that's where he fucked up, Andrew Chafin. But Sarris included some good analysis on this whole and Alvarez swing and a piece about hitters that could break out this year, more about fantasy baseball. But he had it was Torkelson, it was Christopher Morel, it was Francisco Alvarez, and it was somebody else. I forgot who, but just
I like all three of those
yeah,
hitters though.
it was fun young hitters who were going to break out. But Alvarez's highest whiff rate by far is high and up in the zone, especially high middle. And we've seen him take those big hacks, that high pitch.
Yeah.
He wants to hit them and he's going to take the shot at him. When he
Ball's
does hit
big.
that, when he does hit that high middle pitch, he crushes it. But he whiffs a lot in that pitch. And by far, his worst hard hit rate in the zone was up and in. He barely hits it hard there, right here, right in his hands, like right on him, which makes sense. It's a hard pitch hit. And he also, that was the only spot in the strike zone. Francisco Alvarez had 0 barrels in 2023, the only spot in the whole zone. So as much as I told you he struggles that low and outside, he still got his barrel in that ball more than the one that was up and in. Like that just is his hole. But if you look in September, he improved the slugging percentage on that pitch. He improved his batting average on that pitch. And pitchers started actually throwing that pitch less. They started moving it to a little more back to down and away, because Alvarez has like a zone where up and away, he does stupid things.
Yeah.
That's kind of, called it his nitro zone, which I like that. I like the term nitro zone. I like that a lot. Whereas up middle is where he swings and misses the most often. Up and away, if you throw it there, good luck. Up and in is where he does the least damage. But the fact that pitchers identified that hole in season, they were throwing it to him. And you guys remember, he hit that skid once July and August came around. But then once September came back, he himself identified that hole. He started making better contact on that pitch, and the pitchers had to find another plan. So it's already became in season more difficult to pitch to the 21-year-old catcher super prospect. And now he's 22, all different now. But the fact that he's making these adjustments in season and pitchers are identifying them and having to go off those adjustments, this cat and mouse game is something that's special. And that's something that what he's doing defensively and what he is as a prospect and what he has for power, it's not like other people. And if he can do even one of these two things, even a 20% adjustment in each of these two things, this could be nuclear. He could be everything we want.
That was like your grad school thesis right there about Francisco Alvarez. Just let you go for 8 minutes. Like
my magnus
James, take it.
opus.
Yeah, go talk about why Francisco Alvarez is him for a couple minutes. Why he has the best tattooed on his neck. I mean, he really does. He has the ability. Like, we laughed about like always saying like, because every team does this with whoever prospect. You're looking for the next whatever, looking for the next Piazza. He really does have the ability to be that offensively. Like, he could be so good.
So ridiculously good. And people talk about like comparing him to other catchers in baseball. Like the Gary Sanchez comp comes out a lot. When Gary Sanchez was in Francisco Alvarez's age, he was still like working his way through like the Scranton Wilkes-Barre, like
Yeah.
the Trenton Thunder. Like he wasn't even close to the major leagues yet. Adley Rushman at Francisco Alvarez's age last year was like just off playing football at Oregon State. Like to give
Kicking
a sense of
off.
what
Yeah.
he is at this age. Like people, this doesn't happen. People don't do this. People are talking about Ethan Salas right now. Like he's the hot prospect in the world because he reached double A as a 17-year-old. That's amazing. But it's like
Yeah. There's
if
also
he makes
Facebook.
if he
Yeah.
makes the major leagues at 21, like the only comp is Francisco Alvarez. He's the first 20 year
And
old
Johnny
catcher.
Bench.
He's the first 20-year-old catcher to be like a league average hitter, like for a full season in like a generation since Pudge. Like this is special. What you're seeing is unique and different. Like it might not click this year. Maybe it's next year. Maybe I'm a year early. Maybe it's 2 years after that because of how hard it is to catch in the big leagues. Like maybe he goes through a sophomore slump and I look like an asshole right now. But like all the pieces are here for him to be like a future superstar, and that's the
100%.
point. That's what I'm
And I
trying
mean,
to get across.
the dude works so hard. You heard Trevor May talk about it too. Like, he's just such a hard worker. He is not content with being where he's at. He wants to be the best, like he has tattooed on his neck. And that's part of it too. You gotta want it, and he's got some fucking dog in him, that's for sure.
Tons.
The other guy I want to talk about, who I think, in my opinion, could be the most important on the team, it's going to be Brett Beatty. And the reason is that the range of outcomes with him is probably the most significant offensively, where this is probably the year for him with the Mets. Probably got to figure it out this year. Otherwise, you really start to figure out who's going to be the next third baseman. What are we going to do there? And simply to put it, Brett Beatty can't play like he has the last couple seasons. We've seen the sparks. The sparks have been great. When he's on, you go, oh, it makes a ton of sense as to why this guy was a first round pick, a top prospect, why everybody has so many great things to say. But when he's been bad, he has been like unplayably bad. And
Yeah.
sucks to say, because me and you are huge believers in this guy. And we know he's got the talent. Like, there's way too many people who like what they saw to just be this wrong about Brett Beatty. Sometimes it happens. But if he can figure out how to hit at the major league level, this could be a huge difference maker for the Mets, because you're now taking a position that, for lack of a better term, was an automatic out last year. Whoever was playing third base, you're out. That's one out every 3 innings that you come to the plate. I don't even care how he plays defensively. I truly don't care if he can hit. If he can hit, do whatever you want at third base. Just be better than Rafael Devers, and that's really not that difficult because that guy has no hands. But I don't even think he's going to be that bad defensively. Like, he's a good athlete. And we know that it was a positioning issue because Joey Cora and Buck Showalter and Wayne Kirby didn't actually do anything during the game. They were taking a nap, and Buck Showalter was writing things down in his book. He's like, what am I going to eat for dinner tonight? Like, I don't know. The guy seems so disinterested in the entire game. I think that this spring training, we're going to see a lot of improvements from Brett Beatty. And then it's really just about the confidence, because he has the ability. If he can go into the season confident, maybe get off to a hot start, maybe that's all he needs is 1 week of playing well, and he'd be like, oh shit, like, I do belong here. I am the third baseman. This is my position. Maybe it's sending Vientos down. I don't know. Maybe that puts pressure on him. I have no clue. But I really do believe that if we can get the Brett Beatty that we know is possible, and I'm not talking about being even like a 120 WRC plus guy, give me 105 to 110 range right now. That would be such a massive improvement on what we've gotten offensively at that position last year. That's like 60 points better than what it was last year. I don't care how much better it is than league average. Just being able to improve on the position from what it was last season, I think that could be the biggest difference maker for this entire team.
Something that Matt Eddy told us when he was on, he's talked to us both about too, is that Beatty relatively has struggled at new levels, especially after big jumps. And the jump from AAA to the major leagues is like the biggest jump in professional sports. So that's meaningful. It's also like his first few games at AA when he did that high A to AA jump in 2021. It was also about a month of struggle before he really got himself going. So I think that's kind of might be part of the adjustment as well, adjustment period. Just the fact that these big jumps, like, you just have to get your sea legs under him, and it's still 400 major league plate appearances. Like, it's really crazy. Tim Britton wrote a great article this week on The Athletic about comps for Brett Beatty and like basically whether or not he could turn it around. And his OPS plus in his first 400 plate appearances was in the same range as a lot of guys who didn't make it, who didn't wind up being really good major leaguers,
Of course.
of course. But then a couple guys who come to mind were Aramis Ramirez, Carlos Gonzalez, Torrey Hunter, Jonathan Scope. All in the again, Scope is different than those guys, but even if Brady becomes Jonathan Scope, like I think it
Would be
still
great.
works, still totally works. But it's just it's too not enough has happened right now to write this guy off all the way. And there's the minor league results are too good. He still hits the ball too hard. He was talking a lot in this article too about looking back at swing videos from last year and being like, firstly, disgusted by the way his swing looked, like his mechanics. I'm just talking about the fact that his top hand wasn't right. It wasn't strong. It wasn't staying on the bat, and that's why he was pulling his ground balls and hitting his like popping up the other way. Yeah, so that's like, and he knows. Like, he talks about it. He's like, I know I have to get pull power. I know I need to hit the ball in the air to right field. Like that's where I'm my best baseball player. That's where I have my most potential. So he fully aware of it. He's watching the videos. He's definitely working with people. Like it's all right there. Like he was such a good prospect, and not just like with popcorn stats. Like the walk rates were good, the strikeout rates were good, the power was amazing, the fly ball rates were in line. Like the exit velocities are insane. Like his batting practice still is fucking silly.
Awesome.
Like if anybody gets to the field early enough to hear, you gotta watch a Brett Baty batting practice session because he hits rockets all over the world. He's aware of what's happening and he knows how to fix it, and it just becomes a fact of doing it. And I think that it's a moment where we all got to be we all got to be like Philly fans for a second.
We got to be fucking.
Got Trey Turner a little bit. Opening day, ovation, raucous crowd. Everyone's got to do it.
If you fucking boo him on opening day, you should be ashamed of yourself. Get fucking real. Like you guys know we hate those fans. You know we hate those fans. But like a kid who's had 400 plate appearances, why would you not want to give him an environment where he can succeed? I don't understand those Mets fans who are like, I want to boo my players so that they hate playing here. They hate coming to their job. They don't want to play well. Like, I want to make their job even harder than it already is. Why the fuck would you want to be that guy? It's never made sense to me. Again, if someone is dogging it, or if someone is, I don't know, maybe Anthony Rendon, who's an asshole, like, I could get it. But this is a young kid who's just like had 400 tough plate appearances at the highest level of baseball played anywhere in the world. Root for this kid. If he stinks, you can blame me and James. Sorry, we gave you bad info. Sorry, we believed in all the stats and numbers and that they failed us one time. But like, just give this kid a fucking chance.
It's not even just stats and numbers. It's also scouting reports in people's eyes. Like
blame everyone in baseball.
Everyone else. Blame Baseball America. Blame Matt Eddy. Blame everybody. But it's just like there's pressure. He's like, he got thrown into like what felt like a pennant race beginning of last year, and he kind of got caught and he never caught up to it. But he's still a guy who was 40% better than league average at AAA, 50% better than league average at AA, when he was always like adequately aged or slightly young for the level. There's so much here where it's just like, what I don't know. What if he just has a 15 homer year in his league average? Like that's Alec Bohm. Alec Bohm is celebrated. People sing his name in the streets. Like that's all we need. Give me a 250 batting average, 15 home runs, 100 WRC plus, and start making moves to the next year. Because like that, just get your legs under you and be a good baseball player. Because I know he is a good baseball player. I know he knows he can be a good baseball player. I know he wants to be a good baseball player. It's just about the execution at this point. I think that's not as far away as most Met fans want it to be.
I'm starting to get excited about this bottom of the order. I'm telling you, I'm getting good feelings.
I'm so excited about this Mets season this year. I'm so excited about
good
this.
Feelings, man.
I can't wait to just grind 85 wins. It's gonna be awesome. And then
can't wait to pay for like a $2 ticket, bring in a sandwich, and just watch some afternoon baseball on a Thursday.
So excited to bring my own food into Citi Field. I can't wait to pack my lunch.
Although free food was awesome, but
no, if it's kick, but no free food. That's where we're at now. I'm not buying that overpriced food anymore. That makes my stomach hurt. But I can't. Tupperware is gonna go so crazy this year in Citi Field. I'm gonna bring extravagant lunches into that place. But last guy I want to talk about quickly because we're over an hour here. The last X factor is guy I've been talking to you guys out all year. I'll give you 2 minutes on him. Just Christian Scott. Like the world's starting to get hip right now. Tacomo posted a tweet about him flummoxing Mets hitters in live VP the other day.
It's a good word.
Thesaurus. February is thesaurus month, but he's just the velocity's still going up. The secondaries are legit. Like the prospect world, the fantasy baseball world, everyone's starting to get ready for Christian Scott. The 40-man thing makes me like really think they might not put him on the roster as soon as they want him to be. But like I'm hoping he comes out in spring training. It doesn't give them a choice. And that June, July, we're seeing Christian Scott throw meaningful innings. Like this just to me feels like the first of what could be another wave of Mets pitching prospects. We're going on a decade without developing a pitcher. So it's time. And I know I'm not going to believe it till it's true, but everything I'm seeing on Christian Scott makes me think it's true. So just I'm ready. I'm ready to get hurt again.
Yeah, pitching lab. Trust the pitching lab. Trust Eric Yeagers and Jeremy Hefner. I'm gonna let them do their thing.
Hands off. And then Last thing to leave you guys with is that there was a rumor this morning that Francisco Alvarez near an extension. We recorded early because I got some stuff to do today, and Hector Gomez says not. Hector Gomez says happening. Andy Martinez says not true. Choose your own adventure. Oh my God, the Mets signed Francisco Alvarez to an extension is the greatest thing ever. Or oh my God, the Mets still have not signed Alvarez to an extension, so nothing has changed.
We'll say Hector Gomez has about a 50-50 rate. He
Yes.
is either like so early and like it fucking drives Jeff Passan and all those guys nuts because him and Jeff Passan have major beef, and I kind of love it. Like Jeff Passan will take shots at him, he'll take shots back at him, kind of like a little reporter beef. These guys are too friendly over there, but I'd love for it to be true. I'd love to sneak away some years of Francisco Alvarez for cheaper.
Right. Just get. I mean, yeah, also like, why not just do it? Just rip
Yeah,
it. Like, just have some fun here.
why not? It's not our money.
It's also like I would love him to not to deal with arbitration. Just go back to Venezuela in the offseason, hang out with your family, do what you got to do, and then come back ready to go when you're when we're ready
Totally.
for you.
100%. Guys, we have nothing else to talk to you about today. If anything else happens during the week, we'll drop an emergency episode. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening and watching. Remember, if you're listening, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download and subscribe over on the YouTube channel, Mets'd Up Podcast, if you want to find us there. And then our social media, Mets'd Up on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow us and see our short form content, which we've been pumping out. Appreciate the amazing support you guys have been showing. We're excited baseball's back and can't wait to talk some more with you guys on the next episode. Peace out.
Peace out. See you guys next time.